People are dying. Cancer, yesterday we talked about 2, 3 year olds having cancer. There are a lot of stuff that is happening around us, which are indications of the different voices with which the environment is crying out unto us, and we are ignoring it. An environmentalist did a projection and said if we continue in the same consumption and production pattern, by the year 2015, we will need 3 planets to contain.
This year?
2050.
50, okay.
Sorry. We will need 3 planets to sustain our lifestyle.
Oh dear.
Going back to what he said, we are at a tipping point.
And population is growing.
Population is growing.
Especially in Nigeria.
Yes. So what we need to pay attention is what is happening in this relationship. Unfortunately, so many people are not paying attention.
I was going to ask a question. You know, sometimes when we talk environment, we're talking gas flaring, we're talking about the big companies, we're talking about the government. Can we bring it down to the individuals? Let's talk to us as individuals. Everyday living, everyday moving around. What are we doing that's helping to destroy this relationship?
Environment has to be upgraded to a lifestyle. When it becomes a lifestyle, it becomes inborn in you. Every human being wants to survive. Therefore, you find that when they get tired, they go to sleep. When they are sick, they take medication. When they are hungry, they eat food. So that is the attitude we need to engage in dealing with the environment. Anything you do, you must consider the environment because you live in the environment.
Okay.
And the environment sustains you.
That's right. Okay, Doctor, we'll come back here. Let's reach get one of our guests in our Abuja studio, Mr. John Osonwa, environmental expert. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure being here.
Yes, let me throw that question at you. We've talked about the theme of the World Environment Day of yesterday and the sub-theme, which is sustainable production as well. But how would the individuals globally, in Nigeria and beyond, populations rising, and the activities of man don't seem to be changing for the sustainable side of the environment, towards the sustainable side of the environment, how would the individuals change to make things different?
Yeah, at the individual level, there are a number of things that we can do. I would take the case of Nigeria, for example. Right now, we rank as #1 in the world when it comes to deforestation. Since independence, we have already lost about 90% of our primary forests. Every year, there is a net loss. And this is attributable to our farming methods, bush burning, the way that we cut the forest without replanting. So you have a very clear profile for Nigeria. And that has a number of consequences for Nigeria. For instance, desertification in the northern region of the country. Because we don't have the forest cover, the Sahara is advancing at about half a kilometer every year, despite livelihoods. You hear of Fulani herdsmen invading villages in the south. That's a function of climate change because the area where they used to occupy to graze cattle, to live, to get water has been aridified, desertified. So the land no longer supports life. So people have to migrate. They are forced to migrate. They are climate refugees. And as they migrate southwards, people who have farmed their lands now find themselves in conflict with cattle trying to graze. So that's a function of climate change that people don't think about. You have in the south erosion because of desertification. If you don't have the forest cover, erosion sweeps the landscape faster. So these are palpable consequences of our behavior. But the one that troubles me the most is that the rate of deforestation is also aggravating our climate change profile in the sense that trees trap carbon, trees sequester carbon, they create a balance in the environment. So when in the last 10 to 15 years, we have depleted about 6 million hectares of forest in Nigeria. Some of it is to export charcoal, which the world has banned, but Nigeria still allows it, and people export charcoal outside. So you have about 6 million hectares, and that's a huge amount of trees that we have removed from the environment. So it's now creating an imbalance. So not surprisingly, Nigeria ranks as #1 in Africa when it comes to contribution to climate change. Because of gas flaring you mentioned, deforestation, the way that our vehicles, we don't have any emission standards in Nigeria to limit the amount of pollution. So these are palpable things that you feel in the country, and we need to do better than that.
Okay, let me come back to Ms. Williams in the studio. Don't you think that we need a population policy? That, I mean, people are having 20 children, 30 children. Wouldn't a reduction in the population help our situation?
Oh, yes, indeed. Population is always linked to climate because population has to do with the resources that you have. And when there's an increased population, what happens is that there's an increase in the demand. And what we have is a finite resource. Land, for example, is finite because it's definite. The borders and the boundaries of land are already determined. And so when we have an increased population, there's an increased demand. Another problem that population will give to us is, the fact that you tend to have a lot of ignorance. Because when people are so many, information dissemination becomes a problem. Now, what I discovered is that a lot of the problems we're having with the environment will be most felt in the grassroots areas. And interestingly, those are the areas of population concentration. Those are the areas where you have massive numbers of people. You have the household having between 10 to 12 people living in a room. You may be shocked, but that is true. And these are the places where the devastating effects or impact of climate change will be mostly felt. And they are the ones who are mostly ignorant about it. They still pour their refuse in the drains when the rains fall. They still do all of this, unsustainable acts. So indeed, if we have a policy that will put into perspective the future,
Former President Babangida did say, I think at that time there was a law saying that the Nigerian could not have more than 4 children. But it doesn't look like it's being enforced.
Yeah, but I'm sorry, but it's actually the woman are to blame. The Nigerian woman.
Oh, really?
They're too beautiful now. Cooperation is so.
Yes, much.
Tempt me not.
I don't know if someone agrees with you.
No, but you're right. You're absolutely right. We need to
I do agree with one thing though.
But I know.
And that is that the women make 80% of the consumer choices in the world. Our research at the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, women are so powerful, but they don't know it. If you were to look at the consumer choices made, women are responsible for about 80%. So there's a need for eco-consciousness. There's a need for awareness. What we eat, what we buy, what we do, all those things have ramifications for the environment. And this is another information we have from the US EPA. For every dollar that you spend, $1 that you spend, you get about $40 in benefits. You spend cleaning your environment, greening your environment, you get about $40 back. Then if you were to transition your economy to a green and sustainable economy, it would take 5 years for your GDP to exceed what it would have been if you continue with the pattern that we have. Then the final example I give people is, if you want to industrialize in a very rapid, and I would even say slightly irresponsible manner, then you have to look at some of the countries that are facing the consequences of that. Look at China, Beijing, for instance. Most days now, the air pollution, the amount of air pollution in the air is so bad. Sometimes it's 50 times what it ought to be, that people have to wear masks. The government will issue an advisory, say stay indoors. Those who are old or have asthma and pneumonia problems, you dare not come outside on those days. So that's what happens when you have an unchecked march towards industrialization. So Nigeria needs to take a clue from all of this. In terms of GDP, we'll benefit. In terms of jobs, we'll have more jobs in a green economy. And then the benefits far outweigh the initial outlay of money that we'll invest.
Absolutely.
Even on a small note, when you look at an individualistic approach, we have a waste culture in Nigeria, in Africa. We have a very bad waste